see how this.
Oh no, we're being recorded.
Oh no. Oh no, we're being recorded. Uh just so I can check, it's not Doherty, it's Doherty. Is
I
there like
like that you went full Irish. You could say it depends how Irish you want to get. I
Matthew
mean,
Doherty?
Doherty is like the usual, but if you want to like go back to Chicago and talk to real Irish, it's Doherty. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just it's Matthew Doherty.
But
So
yeah, but you can say, let's give it a little, give it
just
a
give
little
it a
bit.
little. Yeah, everyone thinks I'm Irish. I'm,
Doherty.
I'm
Yeah.
not, but I do appreciate a good Irish pronunciation.
No, you did it well. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like you're joining us because of something I posted on Threads about.
Yes.
So I married an axe murderer being one of
Which
my
several people told me about.
several people. I did not know that I had that type of influence because it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So that's how we are connected.
Hmm.
But then I learned more about you and I was like, oh, this is actually a very interesting person because before we got recording, we were talking about LA and the different type of people here and stuff like that. And just because somebody's been in a good film doesn't mean that they're generally an interesting person. Would you agree?
They could just be lucky. They could, which might make, and that now that doesn't necessarily, there's a lot of intersectionality between luck and interesting. But yeah, I mean, most people bore me. So yeah, it's like I get, but the fact that you find me interesting, that's great. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, I think that people who start their careers, who basically have adult careers when they're
Mhm.
children, they go on a very different life path. I was listening, Jason Bateman was describing what his childhood was like, balancing supporting his family as a child and making sure he stayed in school and got good grades so that he could do the job. Like it's
Yeah.
very, I mean, that was a different generation than you, but it makes me realize that it's a very nuanced thing to go through and then
Oh yeah.
kind of have.
It is a very unique perspective on life that has many rich rewards, but they come with a lot of pain and a lot of personal work.
Mhm.
And but I have an instant affinity and connection with people who've had that experience. Like it's
Yeah.
just I could smell out. I don't care if they're maybe they were at an elite soccer academy at a young age, or they
Mhm.
were musicians, coming in youth orchestras in a city, or they were
Yeah.
actors like me, or it's weird because you like it's what you just described with Jason Bateman, who's a mensch, right?
Mhm.
And in this industry, that's quite a thing.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, you're like you pretend to be an adult when you're a kid, and then yeah, you're earning money, and it's just such a strange perspective. And I used to say like I do have, you said nuance. Like I know what it's like to be driven around in a limo and then to have driven the limo in that order. Right.
Yeah.
So it's
Humbling.
like
Humbling.
that's an experience that not a lot of people have, but I actually think it makes for, like you said, I have a really unique perspective on fame
Mhm.
and supposedly success, quote unquote. And I
Mhm.
know I'm like, yeah, so yeah, I mean, like I started a hockey team when I started a hockey team. What do you want? Like I was 17. Okay, like it doesn't solve any personal
Wait,
things,
sorry, go back. What do you mean started a hockey team?
I was in the Mighty Ducks films, and like everybody's like and it's just such a strange experience that I was in these movies that
Right.
literally created a hockey team, and like that doesn't make you happy, none of that
No.
stuff
No.
solves anything. It sure is amazing,
Mhm.
and wow, I'm grateful,
Mhm.
but like it doesn't, like it's weird when you're in entertainment to have known like that, like it doesn't it doesn't make you happy.
It doesn't fill your cup at the end of the day. I
Yeah.
think being in the
There's
entertainment industry for a long time as well, on a very different level, you have to be really into it, and what fills your cup is actually the creative process and what you do rather
Yeah,
than like a immediate deal breaker for me with people is when they tell me that a goal of theirs is to be famous. That's
yeah.
always a huge red flag. It's like, oh, your goal is to be very unhappy.
You're, you're like, yeah, ooh, oh, okay, come, okay, let me know. We'll pick you up off the pavement. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like in our society we monetize everything, and like or if something is not successful, if you're not, it's like, wow, the can you just enjoy, it sounds so like a postcard or like a book. It's like, can you enjoy the experience, the ride, and all of that? And there's a much easier way to make a living in this world, but there's not much more gratifying, but not
Mhm.
for the reasons we think it is.
I think you're onto something there. Have you ever heard of a project called Post Secret where people mail in
Mm.
secrets? They mail in like postcards and it's like secrets. And for years I had it saved and I was looking for it recently, like 20 years, but it was somebody had mailed in this postcard and it was just a picture of a man looking at a lake and it was in Latin. And what it meant was to find happiness in everyday life. Like, I think
Mm.
that's what people forget. And they think that fame and notoriety are one, the same thing. They're not.
Mhm.
To be good at something you really love is different than to be famous in my
Yeah.
eyes. You know, like
Yeah.
I example, I'm a huge Elliott Smith fan who's, rest in peace, quite famous, but he has more notoriety. He's known for being good, not for being famous. But then there's people who are known for being famous and not necessarily being good. And I understand that we no longer live in a meritocracy, but we're of similar generations where it's like everything you're passionate about has to be monetized. And if you don't monetize the thing that you're passionate about, whether it's,
Yeah. People,
bedazzling Vaseline
it
containers
takes
or,
on less
yeah,
value. And like, I'm like, well, what is value? How are we defining value? And,
I
and
totally agree with that. And it's almost like a compulsiveness. I don't know if it's because I'm a millennial and because I've been through recession after recession and we're just always like, oh, make sure you monetize that. But it really does take away the joy of things. But
uh,
going back, sorry, go ahead.
can I share a quick story on
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
then I'll shut
yeah,
up on it? Was
yeah.
I remember I was doing a play. It was a John Patrick Shanley play with some colleagues over here in this tiny little theater. It's a great American play. All these young actors. It's like a rite of passage. You do it, and like it's called Dreamer Examines His Pillow or something. And um and it's just a play when you're young, you're supposed to do, right? And
Mhm.
so I remember doing it, and there was this director named Barry Primus, and who's still around. He's a great director. He's done films and all this stuff, and he's working with us on this tiny little play and this tiny little thing. And I was miserable. I was broke. I had no money. I was like so broke. And the phone was ringing during rehearsal to Barry, and it's his friend Bobby on the other line, and he was interrogating us about where we were at and how we're working on this play. He's like, well, where's the theater? Oh, it's above this like storage unit, and and it's like this. Oh, tell me about it. Where you guys rehearsing? It's great. Oh, I'm so jealous. And he was talking to Robert De Niro, who literally for 40 minutes was envious of us
Mhm.
working on this play while he's stuck in an airport.
Yeah,
Because him
totally.
and Barry Primus had been friends and for decades and decades and decades, and then and to me it's one of my favorite stories of all time because this is Bobby D, man. And I'm like at my lowest point and like I remember I couldn't even afford going out to dinner that time, and
Mhm.
and one of the most people we put up on a was like, wow, you guys are so lucky.
Mhm. I
So
think
I never forget that story.
yeah, I think perspective is everything in the industry. And I think when you talk to people who have made it to very big heights of fame, they kind of wish they're like, I wish I kind of had stopped there and just stayed, found a good job and, did a bunch of plays or, found that momentum. But focusing quickly on what I know many people want to hear.
Well, I'm wearing the shirt. This is literally
Wait, let's see. Oh, I can't see it.
this is literally, can you see it? I don't know. It says sorry murder and axe murderer.
Oh man, I want that
And
shirt.
this is actually the only crew shirt that ever existed. I brought it out. I figured I'd wear it for you guys. So
Well, it's timely because Mike Myers is very much in the media with all the SNL and Canada stuff right now. I so I married an axe murder came out when I was a kid, and I rewatch it every so often. It is like a perfect comedy,
yes.
and it's timeless. Like it's you wish you could go back to was it 94? Was it 90 or was it
94,
92?
95,
Yeah, it
something
was
like that.
you
94.
wish you could go to like a 1994 coffee shop in San Francisco. Like it just seemed like the world got so much right then. 90s nostalgia. But
Oh yeah.
you were brought in on the project when you got the script, were you like what did you think of it? Because I think when you explain the concept to somebody, you're like, oh, this sounds really campy. It doesn't sound funny.
Uh, it's so funny. Like I had just done Mighty Ducks, and Steve Brill, who wrote Ducks, I guess, he knew Tommy Schlamme or the writer or something. So I
Mm-hmm.
maybe they must have been some grease wheel somewhere behind the scenes that I didn't know about. Again, lucky, right? And
Mm-hmm.
or is the thing rigged? I don't know. And I experienced luck.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I remember reading the script, and I'm just a kid. I'm like, I think I'm 15 or 16. I'm 16, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't stop laughing. So like I knew there was something funny there. Uh and I know like it's the same thing. Like we didn't know we know I don't think anybody knew they were making like literally a cult classic, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think anyone like the same thing with Mighty Ducks. Like you don't know we didn't know we were making something that would still be made, and and I've been in two of these things in my life. You're
Mm-hmm.
lucky if you get in one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like I didn't know we were making this thing that is still people watch to this day, quote all the time. There's memes, there's like it's just
People know it word for word. I tried to do a viewing party in Los Angeles and I couldn't find a theater to do it, but there were thousands of people who were like, I will
oh yeah.
fly to Los Angeles to sit in a theater with a bunch of people and scream out the words to this movie. Like
Yeah,
I would compare it
it's brilliant.
close to like a Monty Python
Oh
level
yeah. I
of
would have
quotability.
I would put it on that level, but it's a miracle it ever got finished. And that's the thing that I think not a lot of people even like it was just there were so many reasons why like nobody knows how new that technology was
What
that
technology specific?
allowed him to kind of be on two sides of the
Okay, yeah,
screen.
I wanted to talk about that because I
And
think,
like
yeah.
the fact that like we didn't know that we were beta testing a lot of technology from Industrial Light and Magic that they would then use to change the whole industry
Mm-hmm.
with Jurassic Park and all that stuff. Like they were kind of beta testing this stuff
Mm-hmm.
on somewhere like a comedy. They can't get hurt, right? And
Mm-hmm.
but they were dealing with improvisers. So you can't, and I think that's what made it so special was like, you got like Mike Myers in his power,
Right,
unable to do the same thing twice
right,
ever.
right.
And you have these technical parameters like you can't like they didn't have the ability to go like if you move a thing a little bit, then the whole thing was messed. Like you had
Mm-hmm.
to have like every little bit, they'd take Polaroids. And so it just didn't, I don't know how we pulled it off because nobody could keep a straight face.
Mm-hmm.
Worst of all was Brenda Fricker, and
Mm-hmm.
and like we couldn't get through a take without somebody laughing.
Right.
And then take on that, they literally like because they had the screens that were doubled over, like literally every little prop, like if you moved a little thing behind me just a little bit, it would blow the take. So it was impossible. So it just took us forever to do it because everybody was having such a good time, and then it
Mm-hmm.
would like ruin the take and then all that stuff. And then I'm just this kid, it's just crazy.
So when you're filming those scenes, and for those of you who've seen the movie, we're referring to the scene with the dad,
Yeah, the
where
dad.
the
Yeah.
dad and Mike Myers, main character, who are the same, both Mike Myers are interacting. When you guys are under that amount of pressure, you're dealing with Mike Myers, who's a master of improvisation. So, like you said, he's not doing the same thing twice. You don't know take to take what you're going to get, but you know that it's always going to be really funny. Like I'm just laughing, just even
Yeah.
imagining
It's
it.
like I still laugh to this day. It's yeah.
Was maybe this is a bit personal, but like, would he get frustrated at you guys laughing at him?
No, I think it fueled him.
It fueled him. Okay, that's good to know. Because I would say, like, was he getting frustrated, or he's like, no, don't
Oh
laugh, but
God,
like, I'm
no,
being really
no.
funny. Because I feel like sometimes people have given him a rap of being, like he is a comedy genius, and I don't use that term lightly.
He really is. Yeah, yeah.
And he does take, as funny as he is, I think he takes everything he does very seriously.
Oh, absolutely. That was my experience, and that's how I remember it. And no, if there was pressure or frustration, it was everybody who was just trying to not lose the day and get it done.
Right.
And and which is absolutely understandable. But literally, if I close my eyes and I think of my time on that set,
Hmm.
I was there for weeks, even though we were only in like four scenes.
Right.
But they were iconic scenes.
Yeah.
And again, like I can't believe how lucky I am. But I remember that what I just described.
Hmm.
Anthony LaPaglia, I think that's how I forget.
Yep.
That's how his complete inability to make it through a take, and everybody chain smoking cigarettes. Because this is the 90s, so like he just like Brenda Fricker would just kind of go over to the other side of the kitchen in this fake kitchen and
Is she still
chain smoke.
around?
Yeah, yeah,
She's still,
she just doesn't want to be a star. I actually have some Irish friends who her respect in Ireland is, paramount, but she just never wanted to do all the like the stuff we're talking about.
yeah,
The interviews, the circuit, all that stuff. She
the
said,
theater that goes along with
yeah.
it. Did you get to meet Alan Arkin?
I did very, very briefly.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the other thing about this film that like there are icons, like heavyweights of comedy. I got to meet Phil Hartman for a minute.
Oh yeah.
And even though I wasn't in any of those scenes,
Yeah.
it was like a trailer, the makeup trailer. You'd be doing a test or something.
Yeah.
And like we had
Charles
Charles
Grodin.
Grodin. We had my God, man, I remember the moment I met Amanda Plummer. Like it's ingrained in me. Like you spend 30 minutes in she's exactly like her, you know.
Yeah.
And then you have Stephen Wright, the amount of comedic genius that is in that film is like Blues Brothers big. You know how Blues Brothers like
Yeah.
it's filled with all these cameos and it's the same thing with Sorry Murder and Axe Murder. It's just like Nancy Travis. I mean, like just what it's insane, the amount of great generational talent that just happened. And maybe it's because everybody wanted to go to San Francisco. Who knows?
Well,
And
yeah, and then you had Mike Myers kind of in his, I mean, he was massive in the
yeah,
90s. It was still a massive star now, but so you kind of had that, that you were working with him in every scene, right?
yeah.
That you did.
And another thing what was so really amazing about who he is he would play hockey every day at lunch. And I was, obviously I didn't have my rollerblades. I wish I had brought them too. I think maybe did I play like floor hockey one time? But no, they would literally play rollerblade hockey at lunchtime, like
Street
every day.
hockey, yeah. And
Yeah.
he'd yell car, just like
With
in Wayne's
his yeah,
World.
with his Toronto, I think a Toronto Maple Leaf jersey
Yep.
on. It's like
Yeah,
he's
he's
a
a
diehard,
diehard
man,
Leafs fan.
which is a level of sports pain that is
Oh, I know.
unmatched.
I'm from a family of Leafs fans. I've watched my family members get their hearts broken every
And
single season.
every year I cheer them on in the Stanley Cup just because I have a thing for losers. So it's I'm a White Sox fan, as you can see from the thing behind me, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I have a thing. But he was like he'd wear his jersey, he'd break it out, and there was nothing but joy. I think that's the thing that I like. Every experience I've ever had, like what do you learn from it, And
Hmm.
like that there was a level of joy that like he brought to everything he did, you know?
It's interesting that you say that. I was talking to, and I had this unforgettable conversation with a very well established European actor, and he was in a very well known movie. And I said, did you know it was going to be a thing? And it's funny how some people say like you have no idea you make these things and you just don't know. And he was very, I won't do his accent, but he was like, you knew it was going to be a good thing from start to finish because everyone just had a really good time.
Mm.
And I kind of feel like maybe that's like maybe you have like too good of a time. Like one of my favorite films is Slapshot, and of course I'll bring up Paul Newman,
One
but
of the greatest films of all time.
it was his favorite movie. And this is a guy who made HUD and Cool Hand Luke. And they asked him why it was his favorite movie. And he said, because it was so fun. And they just
Yeah.
got to be themselves. And I mean, this was, 1977. It was a loose set. And like, but I kind of feel like when you're talking about, the sense of joy that you guys had making,
That's probably why it lives. Yeah.
and I feel like
I,
that really makes a movie timeless. I don't know, I don't think anyone can go around and quantify that and study it, but it is something that I hear from people who make these quote unquote perfect films. And it's perfect because like it was, a perfect time and you're capturing that. So I think that's really an interesting point that you
And
make.
like you and I both have music backgrounds, so
Hmm.
there's a thing too when people collaborate. So like somebody comes from a jazz background and somebody has a funk thing and somebody's a folk player and this other person's a Rastafarian, and you're like, how's that going to work? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it's a disaster, right?
Yeah.
And that tension, that creative tension can be a really wonderful thing when you collaborate. I mean, as a filmmaker and a person who mostly lives behind, that's like I love that kind of recipe.
Hmm.
But and I know like really like one of the things that not a lot of people talk about with Sorry Murder Axe Murder, which is that Tommy Schlamme went on, he's had quite a career, and Aaron Sorkin and him were they kind of made the West Wing with a lot of other
Yep.
people,
Hmm.
and what's interesting is that's a very different universe
Hmm.
than Sorry Murder and Axe Murder.
Hmm.
But the thing was, I don't think it was intended to be that way. I believe the first versions of this movie were it was supposed to be more, you know, is this going to be a thriller?
Yeah.
And then there was this push and pull between, Tommy Schlamme wanting to make kind of a thriller drama with elements of comedy,
Hmm.
having Mike Myers in that. And
Hmm.
so that push and pull of the energies is probably what makes this movie so good. But I
Hmm.
don't think anybody realized that it would be what it was. And then maybe it surrendered to that along the way. So I think that that is also what makes this movie so timeless is because of those two very different energies at the head of it.
What was it like first meeting Mike Myers at that time in history,
I
right?
mean, he
Because he
was
was just
like
off
the
of
number one.
SNL.
Yeah, it's I mean, like, Wayne's World, and I mean, it's like I I mean, it's like we just got off the set of Amelia, where I meet Emilio Estevez,
Wait, how old were
and
you when this was happening? Because you were a teenager.
I was 16, looking like 9 because I'm
So
been a
you were
late
16
bloomer.
looking nine, meeting, you know, Mike Myers, like you said, like Wayne's World was huge, like
Yeah.
he was huge on SNL.
I
So
mean,
as a
he
16
was
year old,
yeah, he's like the number one thing you'd watch on TV. You're like, that's
yeah,
Mike Myers, right?
yeah.
And then being a kid who loves comedy, that's like minus the record collection of the 1970s stars that I grew up watching because my
Mm-hmm.
folks watched it.
Mm-hmm.
This was like our people on TV while we were coming of age. I mean, it was blown away that like I had these experiences because at the time Emilio Estevez was, one of the largest stars, and then
Mm-hmm.
going from there to this movie where Mike Myers was becoming, one of the greatest stars at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just but I don't even think about it like that. Like I just was like, this guy's really good at what he does.
Were you
And
starstruck?
no, I don't think I was. Well, first of all, the makeup work was so ridiculous. And I mean, I got to be the beneficiary too because they gave me the fake wig and then these things behind my ears and
Mm-hmm.
um I forget the guy's name, Matthew something or other. He was the most Academy Award winning makeup person.
Mm-hmm.
He did that film.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember getting a cask in my head and like all these Oscars. This guy was like he'd won so many Oscars for makeup. And so I think also you don't really think you were seeing Mike. He was such a magician
Mm-hmm.
that you were really seeing. I was seeing this old Scottish guy in a sweater.
And it
Like it
is
was it was
true.
not. It was truly like magical. Like you're like, this guy's not even there.
But he was basing, I had read, I don't know if this is true, but he based that character off of his father, who was not Scottish. He was
Exactly.
Mancusian from
Yeah.
Manchester. And I don't think his father had passed away that long before. Like,
No, he was, yeah, and maybe that's why it was so good
yeah.
because literally, and I think that's probably why, Nicole, I did not get starstruck because the first time I met Mike Myers, I met my dad, the guy,
Oh,
this old time dude,
okay.
right?
Okay. Yeah. Because he's in character.
And it was like there are actors and then there are magicians,
Right.
and it was truly like this is totally a guy named Stewart. This is no one else. This is no one else.
Yeah. I feel like him and Martin Short have that ability, right? I
Yeah.
was talking to a friend who was interviewed by Martin Short when he's in character as was it Jiminy Glick? Is that his name?
Yep. Yeah.
And he's just like, he's just not there. Like
It's
Martin
just not
Stewart's not
there.
there.
Yeah. Like
And it's a
they're really
Canadian
there's a
thing. I don't know.
reason. No, there's a reason why they used to burn actors at the stake because we were accused of being like, devil
Wizards and
people,
witchcrafts.
magicians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look for actors who have that ability because they're magical, and that's truly was my introduction to that. I think that's the first time I met it in the flesh. I've seen it a
Yeah.
couple times since then, but it was right there in front of me.
I think there's been a couple times that I've witnessed that. And do you know an Irish artist named Damien Rice?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I had the pleasure of seeing him live in concert 20 years ago, and I saw him the other year, and I got to meet him. And he's just kind of this, very nice man, and you wouldn't really think anything. And then he gets on stage, and he's just one person with a guitar, and he just curates the entire audience, and it's like he's like channeling something else. And I think that artists have a power to do that. I haven't seen that in real life many times, but when it happens, it's kind of spooky in a really beautiful way.
Yeah.
And whether it's comedy or whether it's music or whether it's drama, I think that people forget that about the craft of being an actor, right? That
Yeah,
you
we,
really
we
are.
wanna we wanna be transported.
Yeah, you want to be. And there's those people who can do that, and then there's people who are just really good at being themselves.
Yeah.
And that's their thing. And I think that people really struggle with that, being one or the other. Like I would love to see, like, be on set for a Christian Bale film because he's really good at that. Like he's an energetic, I don't want to say monster, but he can really cultivate that. And it's cool when somebody does it in comedy. But going from an indie film and a Disney film, that's quite a jar. Like
Yeah.
you're going from, people smoking cigarettes on set, and then you're, with Emilio Estevez, and was it Joshua Jackson?
Oh yeah, Josh
I'm just giving
Jackson.
all the Canadian names. We all
Oh,
know each other.
I've met all the Canadians. Margot Finley, who left the business. Yeah. I know all the Canadians. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but there's Canadians in a hockey movie, which seemed appropriate. There was other people who were, I can't remember who was originally going to be cast in Mighty Ducks. There was somebody else that,
Oh, Jake Gyllenhaal was supposed to be in Mighty
yes,
Ducks too.
that's
Yeah,
right. That's right. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was it like going from, was it like hyper monitored as a Disney film compared to like an indie film?
No, they were actually really similar because we were on location.
All the kids are smoking cigarettes.
No, yeah, we were all chain smoking cigarettes. No, I won't. I won't. I'll. What happens in the locker room stays in the locker room for
Yeah.
30 some odd years. Yeah.
Yeah.
The um. I mean, we were on location. We were in Minnesota, and we didn't know we were making Mighty Ducks.
Hmm.
We didn't know we were you know, changing literally the National Hockey League.
Hmm.
uh, which is actually something that not a lot of people talk about a lot, right? Which is before Mighty Ducks, hockey wasn't a lot of ways family friendly in a lot of ways, and so there's a lot of argument amongst the hockey circles that we did not Disneyfied, but people became lifelong
Made it
fans of hockey.
accessible. You're originally
That
from Chicago,
Yeah, exactly.
so
Yeah,
you're
which is a big hockey town. Yeah,
Blackhawks, right?
I'm a Blackhawks guy. Yeah.
You're a Blackhawks guy.
Not so
Yeah.
much anymore. I mean, my heart just got broke too many times, and so
That's
I'm a local guy on that one. Yeah,
well, I think that I grew up in a hockey family. I never played hockey, I was a figure skater. But I think that, you had those Rock'em Sock'em videos, and there was such, in the
yeah.
80s and 90s, there was such a stigma that I don't want to say it was like, almost like a horror movie in a way, because it was just like they just glorified the fight so much, and
Yeah.
hockey was bloody. And for a long time, people didn't wear helmets, and then they wear helmets, but not like it's still a pretty violent sport. I
Oh my
have
God, yeah.
nephews, and I'm like, oh my God, these kids are 10 years old, and they're just,
I still play. It's a violent yet very graceful sport. That's the thing. It's
yeah,
it's
it's a
it's
definitely a dichotomy. And I've had friends in the NHL, and it's a really tough lifestyle, which no one wants to hear when you get paid, millions and millions of dollars a year. But it's a physically demanding, even maybe more so than the NFL, in my
I'd
opinion,
say I would agree with you on that. Yeah. The
because of
wear
the
and tear
skating.
on, the wear and tear on your body is intense to say
Yeah.
the least.
Yeah.
Uh, um the but we didn't like. but to go back to the original question before we go down the hockey rabbit hole, but they were different, yes, because it was adults but they were like probably similar budgeted,
Oh, interesting.
at that times a lot of movies, as you know, but maybe a lot of our listeners don't know, they're, like what happens in the industry today is probably what happens to our economy in general was that the middle's been lopped out, right? There
Hmm.
used to be a lot more of these, 15 to $30 million movies. And
Hmm.
so they would just make way more of them. And
Hmm.
now it's so rare, you just don't even make them anymore. So
Yeah,
they
it's
were,
either like Marvel
yeah,
or
or
Anora.
250,000 and you got to buy your own lunch.
Yeah.
And so, which is what's happening to our society in general, right?
Yeah.
But at the time, most movies were budgeted at that
Hmm.
because it was sane to do
Right.
that.
Right.
And no, and so I think in a weird way, the experience of going to set was very similar. The only difference being that on Mighty Ducks, I wasn't so isolated because I had all my friends I'd go to school with.
Hmm.
We were like a family. We literally would go to school 4 hours a day. We went to a hockey camp together. We had an experience that was cultivated probably from the get-go to build a team by our
Hmm.
coach,
Hmm.
which is again why it goes onto the film screen because we literally went to hockey camp together.
Hmm.
So then that was very different from San Francisco. I'm the only kid on the entire thing, and they're just trying to not lose too many days to keep
Right.
up with the brand new technology that keeps
Right.
failing itself.
Right.
So, but then the other difference is it's San Francisco. My God, I'm being paid to be in one of the most incredible cities in the world. It's like,
I mean, no shade to Minnesota.
yeah, Minnesota's great. It was great, but we were,
Love Tim Waltz.
yeah, yeah. I agree with you on that. I
Yeah.
agree with you on
I
that.
think it's funny that Minnesota, when Americans do like a Canadian accent, it's always a Minnesotan
Oh yeah,
accent.
there. Oh yeah, they go up to Minnesota there.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, there, but like it's kind of similar, but nobody in Canada really speaks like that.
no, it's not like that. Yeah,
Mike Myers has a very Canadian accent. When I hear him talk, I'm like, oh, that's like a traditional, I say in quotes, but Canadian accent where it comes out and about sometimes. But nobody says oot and a boot. Like that's not a like
that's Minnesota.
that's Minnesota, like don't you know, Bobby? Like that
Yeah,
stuff to me is Minnesota. And I just think
yeah.
it's yeah, I get a little frustrated. I have like a very mixed accent at this point, but that's interesting. And so after those movies where you've kind of been a teenager, you've been in, all these projects, what was your 20s like? Was that a really humbling experience? Like you said, you went from being, a kid in the limo, like in Home Alone, and then you're the one driving the limo.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. No one survives decades in this industry without having, in long periods of time of being incognito. And
Mm-hmm.
it's what you do during those times. Like you look at a Josh Brolin or people like that, right? Man, for 25 years he was no, he would just didn't really wasn't around, 20 years. And one of my mentors and heroes was a man named Marty Landau, who passed away a
Mm-hmm.
few years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
for like 20 years he didn't work. And then he got some like B movie, it's like, and then started working nonstop for the rest of his life. And like, they don't tell you about that, especially when you're a character actor who also
Right.
is a magician, but I just
Right.
don't brag about it.
Just a
And
quick Martin Landau thing. He was affiliated with James Dean very early on in his
yes,
career. A lot of
they were
people don't.
roommates.
They were roommates. A
They
lot of people
they
don't
were
know
roommates.
they
Yeah.
were they were not roommates like people try to paint it out to be right now, but they were
No,
actual
they were
friends.
literally him, Paul Newman, they were all sharing the same flat.
Joanne Woodward,
Exactly.
even
Yeah.
they were all in the same class. I love that era of
Yeah.
Hollywood.
So
Is so
I'm an actor studio member because of all that. And
okay.
yeah. And so the but like that no one talks about those years where you just got to go get a good life. And I was told in my 20s by some agents when and this is when I was like auditioned for everything.
Hmm.
And it was such a strange time because, and I've done a lot of work on it, where like I'm a hair's inch away from, Seth Rogen's life and
Yeah.
mine. We're
Yeah.
like right next to each
I
other.
just had that flash before
And,
my eyes, and you said that because you would have been in close to
yeah,
your 20s and 30s in
there's
the 2000s.
Judd Apatow and Steve, and there's Heavyweights, and that was the first Judd Apatow film. And so there was all of this, and I was in that like whole mix, and and just just didn't go my way. Like, and I think if it did, I'd probably be a dead man. So I think that's actually a really good thing.
What do you mean by
Um,
that? Could
oh,
you?
I had a hard enough time not destroying myself in my early part of my life
Right.
with the resources I had.
Right.
So I've realized that that's probably the best thing that could have happened for me. But
Hmm.
I made a choice on the set of Ducks 3. I was talking with some older actors to just do who saw me like reading and writing and directing books and and playwriting books and screenwriting books, and they were like, "Dude, you need to go study this stuff and get a real life."
Hmm.
And I remember having that moment where I could audition for anything at that point,
Hmm.
and I paused and I was like, "I'm gonna go to school and leave all this."
Hmm.
And so I went to Northwestern University, and which is one of the greatest schools in America,
Hmm.
and was blessed with an incredible education, and and that like because I was like I want to be an artist. I don't want to just like I need the like I knew enough to know I needed to get out of that whole thing,
Right.
and and then I just and go down a different path. And so that's kind of, and then I came back into the industry, and it's just different, when you're coming into your 20s and your 30s, and then I spent a lot of my time just because I was good at something, it didn't bring me the most joy. And so I was like,
It's like the Andre Agassi thing. I
yeah,
think that was his big thing. Like he was the top tennis player in the world, but
yeah,
he kind of hated it. And he talked about that in his book. And it was, I think about that all the time because there's things that I'm good at. And I was like, I really don't like doing this, but I'm good at it.
yeah. And I'm like, and then, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love acting. I had just a negative taste around the industry that I had to let go of. But most of it was that I actually really loved being
Hmm.
behind the camera.
Hmm.
And I love writing for others. I would much rather sit in the back row and uh, get the best out of other people and all that stuff. So that's kind of they just don't tell you that it takes years to develop those skills. And that's kind of the path that I've been on for most of the last 20 years. Yeah.
When you talk about being an artist, how do you define being an artist? Because people, they're content creators and they're creatives, and
Mm.
but like, I feel like an artist is a very, I'm very, maybe a
Mm.
little bit judgmental, but I'll look at somebody and be like, oh, that's a creator, that's an artist. That there's artistry to what somebody does, and then there's just a performativeness. And I get
Oh
yelled at
yeah.
all the time for it.
No, I
But
think
what's your take?
I think that's a really great distinction, Nicole. I agree that we have like content creators. It's like, ugh, it's like, no, it's art, or it's not content. It's like
Yeah,
that right there answers the question.
yeah,
And then there's the term creative that we use for hyphenates. And it's like, it's just
yeah,
new words for new things. And I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, an artist is somebody who can't not do what they do. I had an ex of mine I was with for 5 years who's still a good friend. We co-parent my dog. And
Uh-huh.
in fact, I'm bringing him over there to her spot after this. That
Mhm.
like she's like, Matt, you couldn't write. You couldn't not write if you tried.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a thing stamped on you, if you really are like I teach writing, I work one of the things that brings me joy is I work a lot with artists
Hmm.
and especially people who are blocked. Maybe their
Hmm.
fears, all the things we've been talking about is kind of got their hands around their throat. And one of the things I love to do is work with people like that. And the I think that if you can just do it and you love to do it, then you're an artist. I mean, it's the pursuit of excellence. It's not
Here's
it's the single most important question.
a question I have as I've gotten older, because I've been doing music and in the art space since I was 12,
Yeah.
not in the same way that you are, but I've seen
Nah, it's the same thing.
I've seen so many people who I considered way more talented, way more skilled, way more. kind of hit their pinnacle, which was not what they saw in their eyes. They didn't get as famous or successful or wealthy, and they quit. And then that's it. And I've found that to be the most shocking thing, because for me, as much as I don't, maybe, I'm self-deprecating and don't think I'm the world's greatest artist, blah blah blah, I can't not do it. Do you know what I mean? Like people are like, oh, why are you still making music? Because I have to. Like they don't understand why you're sorry. I have to. And so do you see those people where you're kind of surprised or disappointed, where you're just like, oh my God, you were so good at that. And then you didn't get what you wanted. So you're not going to do it anymore. Like that to me is the most shocking thing that I did not expect.
It is shocking. You ask great questions. The It happens a lot, in fact, and I go through these moments where I question. I'm in one of those moments now where, like, wait, maybe it's part of his getting older, where I think you have to watch out for expectations and what are your motives. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that sometimes we have sneaky expectations. I can only speak for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that can crush dreams so
Mm-hmm.
much more. And then when I'm in my right mind on all that, when I'm like really grounded in what my pursuit is and what I love to do, and I've built a life, like, listen, I don't like, luckily I don't need nice, like all the nice things, which is like I'm built for a creative life,
Mm-hmm.
to be a lifer. But
Mm-hmm.
I have to constantly check my motives and my expectations. And like, I'm just much happier going
Mm-hmm.
back to what you're talking about. There is no guarantee that the thing's going to be a hit or a not hit, like the theme of our talk today. But if
Mm-hmm.
you do it with joy,
Mm-hmm.
like we shot a movie last year with my friends, and like I shot a feature for like $15,000 because, and we probably could have done it for less
Right.
because we needed to do it.
Right.
I just, which I would be promoting on this thing if it, well, maybe when we're finally ready to release it,
Yeah.
I'll come
Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
you. And the
Yeah.
same thing, like I did a little podcast, improv, SCTV rooted
I love it.
thing, making fun of local, well, because we live in a time with no news, no trusted, where it's been squeezed, that we decided to just make this like fake news, War of the Worlds, 90-minute like late night FM fake radio show. And we did it because we wanted to do it with joy.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and I think when I attack my stuff like that, even the things that I'm shopping around at the biggest ends of the industry,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just much, I'm just much, it's much easier to endure the slings and arrows, the ups and downs,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just not fair. And it's a difficult time that's choking all revenue out of everything we're doing. I know people, including myself, who
Mm-hmm.
you would never think would consider leaving this thing because it's just so bad right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a level of hopelessness with a lot of people making stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's no way, and we're on our own. There's no cavalry coming. We're just like, we're literally, there's no cavalry coming. That it's like, maybe I should have kids in Ohio, or, you hear it, but like, maybe they're not in conflict, you
Well, I think
know?
it goes back to expectation, because I
Mhm.
was always a really big indie kid, maybe because of So I Married an Axe Murderer. I saw it, I was like 9 years old. But I think that we have these machines that we carry
Yeah.
around all the time. This is a phone, I have a weird phone case, but it's never been easier to make stuff. But at the same time, we're being told it's never been harder. But then over the last, 10, 15 years, you're having these movies for 250, 300 million dollars. You've taken away all the mid-level comedies that we love. Comedy's not dead, comedy's not illegal, as some jerks say. It's just there's no budget for them. And then here in Hollywood, I get told there's like, well, nobody would go and see a comedy. And it's a very LA thing, but I think like people like to go to it's really fun to go to the movie theater and laugh with people.
Oh my God, it's so great. It's the
it's
best thing.
it's so
Yeah.
great. And LA, I did not realize, is one of the best places in the world to go watch a movie, because the audiences are so
Yeah.
colorful. I went to see a not great horror film, because right now there's this whole thing that only horror films make money and it has to be horror film. So I
Yeah.
went to this horror film, and everyone had like a bottle of wine in their
Yeah.
jacket.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there was just one guy who was just this very flamboyant man, and he was just like, girl, like he was just
Yeah,
giving commentary on the film. And we had such a good time because everyone was laughing together as like an audience. So going back, I feel like that hopelessness and despair, but I think back to all the
isolation.
bands I liked in the 90s who made, these like Pavement, who made these like really weird music videos with Spike and, all this stuff. And I was like, well, are we just not working together to make that?
I think that might be it.
Because there's almost, and I'll get lambasted for saying this because absolutely people should get paid a living wage and all this thing, but I've never lived in a time where people are so wary of pitching in on an indie project. It's like, well, my rate is this, and it's like, well, it's just a
Yeah.
fun. Well, you're taking advantage of me. And it's like, no, no, no. This is just like nobody's making money off of this.
Yeah.
Well, then we're not going to make it. And it's like,
Well, there
no.
needs no. I'm in agreement with you. And I was the guy. I spent 6 months on the strike line for
Mm-hmm,
both the WGA and
mm-hmm,
SAG, and I was a strike captain.
mm-hmm,
But I made a movie where we just these are my friends, and we were like, hey, and I paid everybody for the days, and then I also, but these were my people. We were in the trenches, and I was like, I think it comes down to community. If somebody doesn't want to jump on board on a thing, then they're not my people.
mm-hmm.
And like
And it's not, I'm not saying work for free
yeah,
or anything like that, but it's
yeah,
almost like I think you hit
I
the nail on the head,
totally
community,
100%. Yeah.
where it's like, if my friend was like, hey, do you want to be in my music video? You want to do like a cameo on this thing? I wouldn't be like, well, here's my rate, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'd be like, yeah, let's make this project. You're doing this out of pocket. Like, there just isn't that mentality that even existed like 10 years ago or even 5 years
And
ago.
it might have something to do with the pressures of the just squeeze of how much it is to survive out
Yep.
here.
Yep.
And it used to be, if you were in any of the hubs, Vancouver, LA, New
Mm-hmm.
York, all of them are feeling it right now, where like if you were coming up, you could work 2 days a week, tendon bar or whatever, and a catering thing, and that would be enough to take all your improv classes and still pay your rent.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're a trust fund kid, and that's just not happening anymore. So there's a pipeline problem.
Yep.
And I think there's all these contributing factors. But what I come down to is I can only control, and this is what I learned from these last few years where I decided I didn't want to do any more dead end work. I
Mm-hmm.
only wanted to do work that was my natural skill set,
Mm-hmm.
where I was being of service to my community. And I've somehow survived, right?
Right.
And like, and because my heroes are like that, like David Lynch, all these people, that's, he
Rest in
wasn't a,
peace.
and that it's my social contract. This is what I can control as
Mm-hmm.
a leader of these things, that I won't go long on days, that I feed everybody right, I treat them right, and people remember how they're felt,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to want to come back. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm never going to go long. I keep my word.
Mm-hmm.
And then go figure, people will work for less than the rate.
Mm-hmm. And it's not about getting like,
And I know my
yeah,
work's good. Like I know the
yeah.
material I'm going to be giving them. They're going to be getting great characters. I know the sound person's going to feel more a part of a thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just because that's how I was raised. And I think that that's a value and
Mm-hmm.
that's a commodity, but
Mm-hmm.
I can't control what everybody else does with that.
No, I think that the biggest form of rebellion right now is community because there
Oh
is like,
yeah.
it's very intentional. And I try to explain it to people, but like, especially if you're single, like you just feel like more and more compressed, like even just being like, do you want to go to the bar to have a drink and just have a chat? People don't do that because that's like an immediate $30-$40 commitment,
Yeah. Oh, I know. I
not
went
no
out to
five
dinner
minutes.
last night. I was like, oh my, I took myself on like a little artist thing
Yeah,
myself.
yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
I'm gonna go
Artist
for this. I was like, oh
Julia
my God.
Cameron.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh
Yep.
my God, this is expensive, man. I was like,
Yeah, no, it's crazy, but I think like the biggest act of rebellion is community and
mhm.
having those, I don't know if you went to the academy when they had the John Waters exhibit.
I didn't go there, no. I
No,
really wanted to check that out, but
it
I did.
was it was really good, and what was really evident is he had his community of people to make these films that were, obviously art now, but at the time were incredibly campy and stuff like that. But he could call up his friends and they were all going to show up and they were all going to pitch in and they were going to tell this story. And I don't think you have that because everyone has their own platform now and there's tremendous, cost pressures and time. But I think that if people just kind of came together a little bit more and were focused more on the art and the fun of it, because that my last question I have to you is, are you more of a process person? Like, do you have more enjoyment in the making, or do you feel more satisfied when you finished a project?
Ooh. Oh, it's the making. It's
Yeah.
always the making because the truth is one of my mentors, because as you do things,
Hmm.
whenever I'm just asked to just show up as an actor today,
Hmm.
it's so easy.
Hmm.
I'm like, all you want me to do is stand on a thing and do this thing that I've been doing all my life. Oh, I can so do it. But when you've done like all the other things and you're wearing the 10,000 hats, it makes you appreciate the thing that your gateway drug to this whole thing, right?
Hmm.
But I think that the amount of work it takes to take anything all the way over to finish line, if it's got that indie spirit,
Hmm.
you're so exhausted. It's like the end of a marathon. It's the end of a hockey game. You're so beat up, like the end of a Queen song that
Yeah.
like, which, like you kind of glaze over.
Right.
I think this is a dirty little secret. I think everybody you get snow blind. They call it
Hmm.
ear flu, right?
Yep. Yep.
You don't, you're like, you got that stare because you've been with it for so long that if you don't enjoy the thing, because I mean, that's what I think. It's the days, it's the challenges, you problem solve every day. That
Hmm.
to me is the joy. Because the being done with it, I mean, then you got to go on to the next thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And usually you're
exactly.
like, ah,
Do you ever
it
get
has to be.
sad after you finish a
Oh
project?
yeah. I think the cortisol, we're kind of wired a little like I know like neurologically, physically, I'm wired differently than most people.
Hmm.
Like the amount of cortisol, like I'm the kind of guy that can get really calm in a crisis.
Hmm.
Um, and like, when you do these things with sustained energy and all that, like you do crash. Like everybody talks about getting sick after a thing or
Yep. Yep.
um, and you have to almost build that into your lifestyle, you
Hmm.
know? I think
Yeah.
as the older I get a little less with it because now I value more. I don't want to overgive. I want to value reciprocity, like
Yes.
reciprocate, because like
Hmm.
you've spent so much speculative energy when you're like, oh, does it take much to just send me an email back? Like I've done the work. I got a great
Yeah.
script. Just send
Hmm.
me an email back. Like
Yeah.
it's so soul exhausting that you have to like
There's a lack of
not overgive.
integrity and uh empathy. I call it hypo empathy right now, where it's just like, just say no thank you, just respond to the email, say no thank you, just
Yeah.
respond to the text. I
Yeah.
feel like an old lady where I'm just like, my
Yeah.
biggest pet peeve is when people stop, they're messaging about something and you respond and you give them an answer and then they just don't respond, and then they're like, oh, technology. It's like, no, you take the time, you can take the time.
Because we're all afraid of conflict, especially like it's like, no, like embrace it,
Yeah,
embrace it's okay.
I
It's
think,
like, yeah.
is there a word for like that depression that comes after you finish a project that you like? Because I
I've
suffer
heard,
from that immensely.
I wish I knew. I've heard many words. Deflation.
Deflation. Okay.
Um, I I look at it like I need to recharge. You
Hmm.
know, athletes would, what do they call it? They have a term for it, which actually might be the most accurate. The recovery time.
Yeah.
And yes, like I'm a huge soccer guy, which is a lot like hockey, and I think they use the same word. When you keep up with the schedule of like what do you do for recovery? Um, I think that's really important.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Because one of the interesting things that you said that I resonate with is you get very calm during an emergency,
Oh yeah.
but you probably get very restless and stressed out when there's nothing going on.
That's right. I'm a dog. I'm like a work dog.
Yeah.
So which is for me, you're
I'm
absolutely
like that
right.
as well. Like you put me in a very high stress situation. I'm very organized,
Yeah.
but you give me like a weekend
Nothing to
off,
do.
I'm
Yeah.
self-sabotaging.
So that's kind of where for me, and it's because I think all this has to do with a creative
Hmm.
life. Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a
Hmm.
creative life. I mean,
Hmm.
art living is a creative act, is a rebellious act. But like
Hmm.
that, what I recently, and as part of this probably being in my 40s, is like I I can't, I'm trying to really cultivate that doing nothing time. Like I
Yeah,
broke
it's
my
hard.
ankle. I had so many challenges last year where like I was forced, like it was so many challenges tapped on top of each other.
Yeah.
And like I'm a productive dude. Like I can get a script written in a month, and I
Yeah.
was like couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And even though I meditate for a decade, I was like, it was hard. And I was like,
Yeah.
because I like a job and my job was to do nothing.
Yeah. It's I think that's an artist thing. And I think the other thing you touched on is how much of being an artist is being a problem solver.
Yeah.
I think that if you studied artists, you would see these patterns of, that you're talking about. And I think that that's what I like about, being in the studio or working on something creative is that it's like, okay, well, that doesn't fit. Well, then what does fit? My friend and I were discussing backdrops for a photo shoot for dogs today at the charity. It turned into this like whole thing. And it's all problem solving at the end of the day. And I think it's becoming more and more unusual because maybe because of technology, maybe because of other things that people aren't so good at problem solving anymore, even at high government levels, which we won't go into.
Yeah, which we could go into, but
We
we're
could
already
go
late
into,
in it.
but we won't. We're going a bit long, but
I mean, I already wanted to go move to Canada anyway, so it's like I don't
well, even there, I could tell you why the grass isn't necessarily greener.
It's
It's a lot
exactly.
greener right now, though.
It's a lot greener, but
It's a
it's
lot
also
greener
spring.
right
It's
now.
also springtime though.
It's
It's
also
also springtime.
springtime. Yeah, we have, stuff going on there. But I think it's interesting. It's refreshing to talk to somebody who's been in the industry because you started your career when you were how old?
10 years old
So you started when you were 10 years old and
on the set of Home Alone.
on the set of Home Alone.
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay. I didn't know that. So you were with there's a
Oh
bunch
yeah.
of like
Oh yeah. There's.
interesting
Oh
child
yeah.
actors.
Well,
I
when
think
you come
even
up of,
yeah.
in Chicago, if you came of age in my age in Chicago when they were making all the John Hughes films, then yeah, it's a crazy time. It was like to be adjacent to all that. Yeah, that
I
was my
heard
first. Yeah,
John Mulaney was supposed to be auditioned for the role
yeah.
of
I
Kevin.
I was one of the last five or four or five people for Kevin, and then they promised us all we'd be in the movie. And it was Kevin, Macaulay Culkin, and a bunch of redheads, including myself,
Yeah.
and we were all told we'd be in the movie, and that's Chris Columbus kept his word.
Oh
So
wow.
we didn't want to break the hearts of any of the kids. We were all there.
Oh, that's
So
that's
like
how you do it.
that's a leader, man.
I think Kieran Culkin was in it.
Hmm.
Scarlett Johansson, I think, had a cameo in one of the.
She was.
Yeah,
I remember meeting her on Ghost World, which was a
that's
crazy
right.
movie.
That's one of my favorite movies. I was going to bring that up. We've
Yeah,
run out of
yeah.
time, but that is one of my.
I'll come back another time. You
Yeah,
got
we
we'll
could
do
do a
more.
part two, and
Especially since I don't know, like maybe people like hearing about all this art shit. Like if you're out there and you're listening, Nicole's awesome. She does a lot of cool stuff for community. She's also like helping animals. She's good people.
thanks. I
But
paid him
like
to say that.
yeah, but like if you're out there and you're making stuff in the trenches, don't give up. I just want to say that. Like I don't know anybody who isn't struggling right now. And we don't talk about it enough. So if you're out there doing and you want to do something you don't know how to start, just do it.
I agree. I think that we see the highlight reel, as they say, but we don't see behind the scenes. And
Nope.
I'm big into Buster Keaton right now and all the stuff that they did in the 20s and 30s, and with
Genius.
genius but community and on very little budget. So it's
No
it's very
money.
interesting. The last question I have before we go is: do you have a favorite charity that you want to let people know about? I'm big on charity.
Uh, yeah, I do. I mean, I always think that your local dog shelter is always where I lean toward.
Hmm.
And I don't want to tell you the one you should go to because
Love
I got
this.
mine.
Hmm.
I think the thing about charities is we can't care about everything.
Hmm.
You just get exhausted and you don't want to get up in the morning. But if you just care about the one thing, you can trust that other people will care about these other things. So, for me, I like dogs. So, that's always one of them. And the
Hmm.
other stuff is a little more political, so I won't get into that.
Okay, well, that's
But yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But I would say like find like I don't want to advocate for what is your thing, like but if I know that if we just find that local thing,
Hmm.
like it's a shelter or maybe it's a thing that works with vets or something,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
that one thing for you is the way to roll.
I love it. And where can people find you?
Well, I'm on Instagram at for don't ask me why I started at Archie Doman, which is ARCHIE
Okay.
DOHMAN, and I'm also have a website for the work I do with artists, and
Well,
that's a songofourselves.org. And I'm sure one of these days I'll let you all know about the film when it's ready to go.
yeah, I can't wait. Well, thank you so much. This has been
Oh,
serendipitous that we got
you are
connected.
a great interviewer. It is
Thank
a
you.
joy to spend an hour with you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I guess I'll keep it recording. Oh, can I stop?